Planning a bomb in Counter-Strike seems like a simple action for an everyday player. It's a risk act for someone who doesn't know what Counter-Strike is, and a threat for the NSA agent that is spying your computer. But for those who play since 90s, the good data of Counter-Strike, it's ritual that comes with a grand responsibility. When players try to score a maximum point his KD, an original player knows that planting a bomb is the way to save their round. I played Counter-Strike since I was a kid, I don't know, since I have 6 years I guess, when Counter-Strike 1.6 is the fever on internet cafes, followed by World of Warcraft, Dota, and the Duo. At least the Duo was a fever here where I live. The internet cafes, or like they call in my country, LAN house. For those who don't know, is a place full of computers and you pay like $1 to play or access the internet for about an hour. In my old days, me and my friends get together all Friday in a little internet cafe that has about 20 computers. We play all afternoon until night. Remember this magical time in my life, I decided to make a Counter-Strike 2 to remember those days that made my life more happy. So without further delays, let's get started. First of all, I searched for some images for using as a reference. Since Valve doesn't like me, it does not give me the key from Counter-Strike 2 beta access, I must search for images on my own. Precisely, I found a screenshot of someone playing a pop in an overpass game, and this is the beginning. With the images in hand, I start to gather information about the main parts that I need to create the bomb itself. Start with the lever switch with the protection, the keypad, and the LCD. Those are the main stuff that I need to have before I start the project. Luckily or not, I have some of those components in my home, such as the LCD screen, but I end up having to buy others, like the keypad and the protection for the lever switch. Okay, so pick up a notepad. Here's the full list of stuff that I use to build. First thing is the control board. I use a Robocar version 1.0, but this board's available only in Brazil I guess, so you can use the Arduino Uno version R3, the same thing. The keypad is a 4x3 one, only with numbers, an LCD screen, a breadboard if you want to test everything before soldering. I also recommend that. A bunch of wires, and some stuff that I do not call out on the camera, like a 2 ohms resistor, a green LED, a buzzer, a soldering iron, and patience. That's it, all you need for the circuit part. Moving on. So first of all, we need to solder in the wires in the keypad. It's not a complicated process, just remember to not let the wires or solder get in touch with the other components, and everything will be fine. If you have this type of wires like in the video, you can remove the connector pin from one side, but be careful to not let the large pieces of copper. Large pieces of copper can be disturbed in the soldering process and also facilitate the contact between two other wires, so be careful. When you remove this wire's virginity, like you did to your girlfriend, it's time to soldering. In the video you can see that I sold all the wires, but I can leave the first pin and the last pin without any wire. Those are neutral pins and do not need soldering. In fact, you're never gonna see me using those pins in this video. With the pin soldered in the keypad, it's time to connect the wires in the control board. Follow this diagram on the screen to make the perfect connection. As you see in the diagram, you're gonna connect the first pin on the pin 2 and the last pin on the pin 8. If you take a careful look on the diagram, you're gonna see that the first pin and the last pin are no connection. Like I said previously, these pins are neutral and don't need any connection. Let's start with the connection to the breadboard. First we're going to connect the green LED at the first column with the most small leg to the left. That's our GND connection. The bigger leg is the input-output connection. That goes to the opposite side. In the video, the first wire in the left is the GND. This pin is going to be connected to the little leg of the LED, spacing 3 rows under the LED. The second pin is the A0 pin. That's going to be connected the same line as the GND, but 4 rows to the right. After you connect those two wires, the GND pin is going to be in a GND spot on the control board, and the input-output pin is going to be connected at the A0. After that, we're going to connect a 20 ohms resistor under the input leg of the LED. Be aware, the resistor has marks on it, so the gold marks go into LED, and the red one goes into the same column that input-output pin is. The input-output pin, if you don't remember, is the same that you connect to the A0. Now it's time to connect the LCD screen on the breadboard. Make sure to plug in the last column and row at the first table, like in the video. If you doesn't have a connector pins on your LCD like mine, it will be necessary to soldering some wires to make a connection. I do not recommend you to solder the pin connector if you're gonna use the LCD on this project only. If you're gonna use just the LCD in this project, it's better to use wires. To connect the LCD screen is another thing, because it's not a sequence like in the keypad. Pay close attention to the diagram to make those connections. The first right pin is a GND. The second pin it's a 5V pin that goes into the 5V and control board. The third pin is an output and input connection that goes into A1 in the control board. Pin number 4 goes into the digital pin number 9. Pin number 5 is another GND pin that goes into another GND connection. Pin number 6 goes into the digital input number 10. Those 4 pins next are not needed, so you're gonna jump 4 pins. Pin number 11 goes into the digital input number 11. Pin number 12 also goes into the digital input number 12. Pin 13 also goes into the digital input number 13. Pin number 14 goes into A2. Pin number 15 is another 5V connections that also go into 5V. The last pin is another GND connection that goes into another GND connection. You can use the breadboard to spread the 5V and GND pins. When you are soldering the project, you can make one cable that's going to GND and goes into multiple GNDs on the board, and you also can make a 5V pins that goes with the same way. When I was prototyping, I used the breadboard to split the GND and 5V connections into multiple wires. Yeah, you see the message on the screen? It was not me that typed that, it's just a random guy that got in my home and make my mom as a hostage. So please subscribe so my mom can be released. Jokes aside, it's time to open the Arduino IDE and start to programming the logic behind the board. Keep in mind that the code you're gonna see now is just a prototype and not the final code. Please enjoy the time lapse. If you guys want a video about the code, guiding and explaining, please leave a comment below. the time I was programming, the protection for the lever switch arrived in my mailbox, so this means we can add more stuff to our prototype. To connect the lever switch, it's simple, just solder 2 wires. The first one goes into the GND pin, that is off button. The second one goes to input-output pin, that is on button. The GND pin goes into a GND connection, and the I/O input goes into A4. The buzzer is the same thing as the lever switch. You have 2 wires. The first one you're gonna solder is the GND pin, and the second one is the I/O pin. Like the lever switch, you can look at the marks on the buzzer to identify who is the I/O pin and who is the GND pin. When you finish soldering the 2 wires, connect the GND wire into GND connection and the I/O wire into A3. If you did everything correctly, your project now should be functional. Just go to the description and download the INO file in the GitHub repository. Upload the code in the board and make sure to test it. If everything works correctly, congratulations, you have a Counter-Strike prop working on your hands. With a prototype developed, it's time to focus on the art part of the project. I don't know if you can trust me for this part because I repeat 1 year in high school because of art. And no, this is not a joke. At the end of the year, my teachers say that I'm a disgrace. So here is what I used to do that. A cardboard box. It's better that you have one like in the video, because the circuit goes inside this box. A letter paper. It's better if you have the brown one. A black spray paint. A ruler. A pencil. And for the last item, a normal school glue. With the sharp object, cut the letter paper in a way that you make a simple plane. Now you can glue this plane on top of the cardboard box. You can use something heavy to hold the paper glued on top of the cardboard box. In the video you can see that I use a book for hold both in place. Leave to dry for about 2 or 3 hours. This will help so we don't have any future problems. When it's dry, I remove the book on top of it and get a ruler to start to mark some points. What I need to do with this ruler is find the center of it. The center will be our starting point. After that, we can divide into 3 columns, and these 3 marks will be used to represent our 3 C-4 charges. When it's done, I use a piece of paper to make those 3 columns in this paper too, to make a mold. With this mold I can paint some lines. These lines will be made to creating a shadowing effect that at the same time will create a spacing effect. When the painting is done, you can cut the leftovers. With another cardboard, you're gonna repeat the process that you did in the first time by marking the center and dividing into 3 columns. The difference between that process and this process is that you're gonna cut this into 3 pieces. Repeating the same process again, you're gonna cut the other face that you left from the letter paper. You're gonna glue this paper on top of every cardboard column. Again, for this process to be complete, it's better to left glued for about 2 or 3 hours, so we don't have any future problems. When everything is glued, it's time to put the columns on top of cardboard box, and again, do the gluing. When you finish gluing everything on top of it, it's time to use the silver tape. I recommend that you use a silver tape with extreme adherence. What in my country again is hard as shit to find. And now is the part that we are all waiting for. It's time to let it dry. Let it dry for about 2 or 3 hours. And again, this is extremely important, especially this one, because we're gonna open the back of it to install the circuit. If it's not dry, everything's gonna fall apart. And now it's time to soldering everything. When I mean everything is to remove from the breadboard and soldering everything in the control board in the respective positions. Before soldering the LCD screen, it's time to prepare the wires. Same as before, be careful to not let a big piece of copper. Big pieces of copper can be disturbed when you're soldering directly on the board. If you take a look on the video, this is an example of what I said before. I'm gonna join 3 wires together to use just 1 pin GND on the board. If you look again more closely, you're gonna see another patch of wires with the color green. They are also going to form another connection to connect just 1 pin on the board. This is an extreme necessary step, because some boards doesn't have more pins to connect 5 volts or GND. If you are using an Arduino R3 like mine, you're gonna need to join multiple connections to use the same pin on the board. You can use the same schematic that we're using to build the prototype to make the soldering. If you've seen this video, I'm doing a wrong shit. I'm soldering the wires in the pins, and this is not recommended because the wire can escape from the pin after the soldering. But in my defense, I pretend to buy another screen to use in this project futurely. In your case, you can solder directly on the board. Now it's time to soldering the LED. Remember what I say about the LED leg. One leg is bigger than the other. The bigger leg is the input-output pin, and the small one is the GND pin. In the bigger leg, you're gonna be soldering the 20 ohms resistor. The resistor also having soldering rules. Remember to soldering the golden part in the capacitor and the red mark into a wire. The GND leg, aka the small one, you're just gonna solder a wire. Okay, so I'm gonna solder only these wires. This is because I plan to use this control board forward on. This is because in my country, system components are not very cheap. So if you want to soldering this permanently on your control board, I will leave the diagram on the description. Just access the GitHub page and get the diagram. Just remember to soldering everything after you put inside the box, because with permanently soldering, you cannot disconnect and connect pins. First thing that we're gonna put in the box is the LCD screen. For this, I'm gonna make a hole with the size of the connector of the LCD screen. This will allow me to put the cables inside the box. To stick the LCD in place, I'm gonna use a piece of silver tape. The keypad is also the same thing. We need to draw a hole and put the cables inside. The LED is the same thing, just make a hole of the size of the LED. You can tape the lever switch directly on the cardboard box. I end up doing this way when I'm making the video, the little piece of cardboard box, but I decide to remove at the end and just stick with the tape directly. Don't forget to make a hole right beside your lever switch and pass the wires inside the box. You can make a hole on the right top side of the box to input the buzzer. It's the same thing, it's just sticking in with all wires inside the box. You need to connect everything in the control board. If you're gonna soldering everything, good luck. The schematic is on GitHub page. If you're going to connect the pins, be careful. I broke this shit little pin inside this connector. After connect everything, the wiring work is done. You can now close the cardboard box. Now you can decorate your prop board to look more realistic with loose up wires, a little bit more silver tape, and some stickers. I'm also gonna leave the stickers on GitHub page. You can download in PDF format and print directly. Congratulations, you now have a Counter-Strike prop.